Hey everyone, we are starting our unit on the scientific method. This recording will hopefully not take too long. Don't forget that we're writing down everything that is in red inside of our notebooks on the right side of the page. Go according to your table of contents to know what page number you should be on. If you need a reminder for that, there will be a post on Edmodo reminding you what page you should be on. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so anytime we are going to solve a problem, we're going to go through these 7 steps. Every scientist does this, okay, from the classroom all the way to the highest levels of research. We always are going to start with identifying some kind of problem. All right, now the problem can literally be cancer, or it can be pollution, it can be about mutations, anything that you think could be a problem. Now you're going to state your observations. Remember, those are things that we're making with our sight, our taste, our touch, any of our 5 senses. Then after I make my observations, I'm going to form some kind of hypothesis. Now they're usually an if-then statement, but sometimes they don't always have to be. All right. Now my hypothesis we're going to learn about in a second is going to be the explanation that I think might be correct. Then we're going to design an experiment in order to test my hypothesis, see if it's true or if it's false. During my experiment, okay, I'm going to be collecting data, and at the end, I'm going to form some kind of a conclusion. Now, if I'm a very good scientist, I'm going to retest and retest and retest. The more tests you do is the more valid your results. All right, so the first part of the scientific method is obviously making an observation. You have to notice something. All right, now this is going to be something in the world that's around you. It can be about salamanders, it can be about sneakers, it can be about the sun, it can be about water. It literally can be about anything. Our science experiments can be varied according to your personal interests, but we always start with an observation, and that is something that's gathered through our senses. Now that includes eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and touch. Okay, so sight, smell, taste, touch. All right, all of those senses that we use in everyday life can be used to make any kind of observation. All right, let's start with our hypothesis. Okay, now this is going to be a suggested solution. It's going to be an answer. Remember, our problem statement is usually a question. All right, so far we've been using this example about salamanders. So I've noticed that some salamanders have long tails and some salamanders have short tails. And so my problem statement, my question would be, why do salamanders have differing tail lengths? All right, then my hypothesis would be a specific answer. It would be what I think might be the answer to my question. And in our example, our answer or our hypothesis, okay, is going to be maybe that the salamanders have curved tails due to some kind of pollutant, carbon dioxide, oil, plastic, right, in the moist soil where they live. Now, if I wanted to make this an if-then statement, it would sound something like this. If salamanders are introduced to a pollutant in the soil that they live, then their tail length will differ. Okay? Always the if part of the statement is if I do this particular thing, then it's going to have this particular effect on my question or the variable or the thing that I'm looking at. All right? Now, the big thing that we always have to keep in mind is that our hypothesis has to be testable. And what does it mean to be testable? Well, that means that I must be able to design some kind of experiment to see if my answer, my hypothesis, is right or wrong. So for our example, I would need to come up with an experiment that would help me to determine, okay, is pollution actually causing my tail length to differ, or is it not causing my tail length to differ? Okay, so every single time you make a hypothesis, it needs to be testable. You need to be able to decide if it is right or if it is wrong. All right, now that we've actually formed a hypothesis, we're going to actually go into our experimental phase right now. But before we can begin to experiment, we first need to design it. And in order to design an experiment, in order to test our hypothesis, we need to include at least 3 very specific variables. Now, before I tell you what those variables are, you're going to take two little quizzes, two little one-question quizzes to see if you can figure out what types of variables we should be looking for. Once you're done with both quizzes, you have 2 tries for each. We'll go over what exact variables can be found in this particular example. All right, now something to keep in mind when it comes to scientific experiments, okay, is that the experimenter is only going to change one factor, and I'm going to observe or measure what happens, okay? Now, when we talk about measuring, all right, we're talking about anything that can be counted. It can be measured with like a ruler. It can be weighed, okay? You're thinking about things that can literally be observed. And the thing that you're changing, all right, is the thing that you're trying to experiment on, okay? Remember when we talked about those salamander tails? Well, we thought the pollution might be causing the salamander tails to be different lengths. So I'm going to change potentially my pollution. Okay, I'm going to see, well, what happens if there's no pollution versus what happens if there is. So let's talk about some of those variables. Now, first variable that we need to talk about is something called the independent variable. All right, now remember from our little quiz that we took that Marcus, well, he was a little interested to see if the hats helped him out with the ladies at all. Now, the independent variable is the thing that you're going to change. It's the thing that Marcus changed. Now, remember, he changed his hats every single day. Now, he kept his outfits the same. It was always the white shirt, khaki pants, and same sneakers, but his hat changed every single day. That is the independent variable. It's the thing that Marcus specifically manipulated. Now, the dependent variable is going to be what's specifically measured or observed. Remember, we can measure anything. In this case, he wanted to see if it would increase or decrease the amount of compliments that he got. So he is literally measuring or counting the amount of compliments that he gets. Remember, measuring can be counting. It can be measuring with a ruler. It can be weighing anything that you are going to observe to see if the thing that I changed, my independent variable, caused any outcome. Okay, so remember, we're changing something to see if it has any effect. All right, your independent variable is the cause, the thing that you are changing. The dependent variable is the effect. What happens because I changed this particular thing? Now, every single valid or good experiment is only going to have one independent variable. Let's think about Marcus. If Marcus had changed his hat and changed his shirt and girls complimented him more, well, how would he know which one actually caused the compliments? Was it the shirt or was it the hat? So we always test one thing at a time. You will always only have one independent variable at any given point. Now, I need one more thing to make sure that my experiment is good. I need an independent variable, a dependent variable, and I also need a control variable. Okay, this is the one variable that I actually keep unchanged. And why is it so important that the control variable is unchanged? Well, we don't test the control variable, okay? We use the control for comparison. So let's go back to our example about Marcus. All right, Marcus wanted to see if wearing different hats or a specific hat would cause the ladies to appreciate him a little bit more. Well, before Marcus can never know that the hats caused the change, he first has to see what would happen if he didn't wear a hat at all. So if Marcus didn't wear a hat, and then he can compare his results to when he did wear a hat. And if he got more compliments when he was wearing a hat than when he wasn't wearing a hat, then we can be pretty sure that the girls liked the hats. But if Marcus received more compliments when he wasn't wearing a hat, or if the amount of compliments he got when he was wearing a hat was the same as when he wasn't wearing a hat, well, then we can't really be sure that the hats are having any effect whatsoever on Marcus's ability to get compliments. So the control is always there for comparison. We never test it. It's literally just there so we can see, did a change actually take place? Did a change actually take place? All right, so we have 2 little quizzes coming up, okay? Go ahead and read through the prompt decide if it's a good experiment or not. And you need to make sure you tell me why. Okay, is it a good experiment or not? All right, and you do have a few hints that can help you decide if it's a good experiment or not. Make sure you write full and complete sentences. Now, one last thing before we move on to the last parts of our scientific method, we always want to do several trials with our independent variables. So, for example, in the case of Marcus, okay, he should not just try this for 1 week. All right, Marcus needs to do this for 2, 3, 4 weeks using the same hats every single time. So if he decided to do a blue hat, a red hat, and a green hat this week, next week when he goes to school, he needs to do the same 3 hats wearing the same outfit. And the week after that, he has to do it again wearing the same 3 hats and the same 3 outfits. Okay, we always want to make sure that our experiment results, our data is valid by doing multiple trials. Okay, multiple trials. All right, so now that we've actually done our experiment, okay, we are always gathering data, okay? We're going to be gathering data or results. And this is anything, it can be quantitative, which are numbers, okay? So you can literally be writing down times, you can be writing down weights, you can be writing down any kind of measurement you made with a ruler, so centimeters, inches, feet, all right? Or it can be something qualitative. For example, Marcus's compliments, it can be the description of the salamander's tails. So it can be made up of words or it can be made up of numbers. And our data always has to be organized, okay? We're always going to create some kind of chart, table, or graph. Sometimes all 3, depending on what kind of experiment that you have. Now, after I get my data, I'm going to write a conclusion, okay? Now remember, we're always trying to get an answer to the question. My problem statement all the way at the beginning was a question that I was trying to answer. All right, in Marcus's case, he was trying to figure out, well, is wearing a hat going to help me out with the ladies, okay? And maybe his hypothesis was yes. If I wear more hats, then girls will appreciate me more and I might be able to get a date than if I don't wear any hats. All right, so if we put it in an if-then statement, if Marcus wears hats, then he will receive more compliments. Now that we've performed our experiment and we've looked at our results, now you need to write a conclusion that says whether a hypothesis was right or wrong based on the data, right? Yes, we notice that Marcus does get more compliments when he is wearing a hat. Therefore, we can conclude that Marcus wearing hats does cause them to be more attractive. All right, we're always going to be answering, is our hypothesis correct or incorrect? And we're going to back it up with data. We're going to explain why that is true or not true based on the results that we got and the data that we received in our graphs, tables, or charts. Now, at the end of all of this, we're always going to retest, okay? Good scientists retest. Now, in a classroom setting, we may not have the ability to retest, but as a proper and true scientist, if you're ever interested in going into the science or research field, we always retest at the end of a experiment. All right, we've reached the end of our PowerPoints. Okay, go ahead and make sure that you've gotten all of your notes that were written in red. If you need to review the PowerPoint one more time, go ahead and do so. You can play it as many times as you need.